Hail and well met, travellers. Thank you for joining me on this cold December evening. Truly a night to keep your loved ones close, for without them, how can we know that there is such a thing as love at all? That love is not just a fairy tale we tell ourselves, to warm our hearts against the bitter winter chill, and to give us the strength to fight what wicked things lie in wait beyond the shadows. Tonight, I invite you to join me, the Moonlight Bard, as we journey to the distant village of Holme-Shtuttel-Stratis. The villagers shall be receiving a visitor. What does he bring with him with his wagon so white? What does he hide behind his dazzling smile? And what does he seek with those eyes so unnaturally green? All shall be revealed. And now, without further ado, I present to you the wrath of Mount Deldon, Duraq. There was once a village called Holme-Shtuttel-Stratis, a quiet little place on the edge of the world. It had few visitors and tradesmen come to its markets. Its people were quiet, tall, and had long brown hair that was curled. They had bright green eyes and tattoos all of red. They liked singing and dancing and making baskets of twine. They were warriors and farmers and bakers of bread. And every night they met together to eat food and drink wine. To the east of the village was the forest of Golgotan Manchuris. It was ancient, vast, and filled up with tulips, some purple, some crimson, some as pink as a cat's tongue. Some grew high, some grew low, and some grew from cow's dung. To the village's west was the river of Holbaton-Hargruvel. No one could cross without the river master's approval. It was wide and rocky, and although calm in places, had taken the life of many unwitting sailors. For beyond its still pools and hot springs so delightful, there lay hidden around its bends the fjord-fervor rapids most frightful. And shortly after a boat was dashed to pieces there, it would meet the cliffs of Kolbach Koon and fall 1,000 feet through the air. To the south lay the marsh of Dovar Boon Borlak, where it is said the ghosts of the wicked linger on after dying. For good folk depart the world without want to look back, while the cruel are doomed to fester in the poison brewed from their lying. The villagers were the guardians of all these and more, and each knew the importance of keeping the land right, of picking fruit when fruit was ready to come forth, and of chasing away the wolves that came creeping at night. Each one of the villagers had their own task, their own mission, and each turned themselves to it in one common shared vision: to make the village of Holme-Shtuttel-Stratis a safe and happy place, to be born, to live, and to die with comfort and grace. Ah, but who could forget the object of much awe and dread? No one knew for certain, but it had been said that the mountain was put there long ago by the gods, who, displeased by the villagers, threw down lightning rods, hurled thunder, snowstorms, sleet, and hails, bitter torrents of rain, jagged boulders, and gales, till at last there it stood, the all-seeing shadow, the towering mountain to the north, covered in snow. Of those who braved its peaks, none had ever come back, and so the villagers kept away from Mount Deldon, Duraq. Legend had it the mountain was put there to watch the people, so the gods would see if they misbehaved. Then with terrible vengeance they could send an avalanche to cover even the highest steeple, and swallow the valley entirely, leaving none to be saved. But such stories were for dark nights by the fire, and to scare naughty children. Besides, the Holme-Shtuttel-Stratis dwellers felt no desire for greed, cruelty, sloth, or any such sin. They were happy and good, and all as should be, as steady as the mountain, hearts as full as the sea. One day a boy named Bobble Bickerstaffer was sat on a hill overlooking the road. He was playing dice with his cat, and he almost did have her. He was losing badly 3 penny-part nickels he owed, when a sight met his eyes, one so fantastical. He stopped, dropped the dice, and stared. How masterful, he thought. How could it be that a wagon should appear such as the one he could see? It was easy to spot through the woods because of its colour. Its walls, wheels, and awning were painted all in white. Apart from that, it was a carriage just like any other, except horse, whip, and driver were nowhere in sight. It bumbled its way down the village streets, paved with hundreds of carefully laid dark copper cobbles, past the blacksmith, the butcher's, the shop that sold sweets, past the carpenter's shed filled with freshly painted toy models. Heads began to turn and jaws dropped to the floor. Old Mother Filbur, St. Clair, gasped and fell down. The likes of such things had not been seen in these parts before, and soon the whispers turned to cries of wonder all throughout the town. A girl Bobby knew, little Jill Barnett, her long trailing hair ribbon the colour of garnet, tried to chase the thing down but ran out of steam, while Big Mac Colbert tried to understand what he'd seen. Dilbury Winter, the local town crier, climbed to the rooftop, scrambling higher and higher, till he could shout so the village did hear, "That wagon is driven by magic, it is clear." At last the wagon stopped in the centre of the village square. The crowds filed down around it and carefully edged nearer. Then, as if by some spell, a silence filled the air, so that when Bobble's cat sneezed, the whole village could hear her. The roof of the wagon opened with a creak and a sigh. Then emerged a figure, dressed in robes as blue as the sky. He pulled back his hood and beamed a big warm smile. His eyes were so bright and green, Bobble thought they could be seen for mile after mile after mile. "My name is Wisdominus Bozagar the First. I heard tell of your village, and grew a great thirst for knowledge of your ways, and to spend some short days among you as one of your own. And so with your blessing I feel no shame confessing my love for this place you call home. What's more, I bring gifts from the land whence I came. There are plenty for all, and no two are the same. Come take one and see what wonders they be, and may you keep them forever in your favour. For none are more worthy than you who deserve the ripe fruits of my long-sweated labour." He whistled from his lips, and a small wooden soldier rose from below and leapt on to his shoulder. It brought a little brass horn up to its lips and began to play music and wiggle its hips. It could not be, thought Bobble, for how and from where did the tiny wood soldier breathe and blow air? And by what magic could it now listen and hear the music that met its minute painted ear? And which spirit from heaven had taught it to dance? Since when did wood figures have the spirit to prance? All who saw the spectacle were amazed and struck dumb at the strange little creature, scarce the size of one's thumb. Then the back wall of the wagon, so white, fell forward, causing all to leap back in fright. And a procession, nay, an army of odd little things came forth, tossing ribbons, canes, hoops, and gold rings. They danced round the square and made such beautiful music that all of Holme-Shtuttel-Stratis danced with them transfixed. The wood figures joined hands with the villagers then, and danced over field and river and glen. The people showed the creatures every corner of the valley, every cliff top and crag, every last nook and cranny, until, weary with dance, they took to the mead hall, and sat round the fire, telling tales most tall. Only one did not join in the festivities and mirth. Only Bobble and his cat remained fixed on earth, while the rest of the village were carried off on a flight of fancy with the figures that stayed with them all night. And they too could speak and tell stories long forgotten of spirit worlds and fairy realms and dead kings gone rotten, of giants, sea beasts, tigers, and kind young princes, of dungeons and mazes and cruel riddling sphinxes. When the day was finished and all were asleep, they dreamt of the wood soldiers that were now theirs to keep. And so he had come, with much pomp and acclaim, Wisdominus Bo-Zagar, the first of his name. Bobble, although impressed by the wood figurines, had no taste for dancing or any such scenes. He had never joined in with the games of the others. He lived outside the village, had no sisters or brothers, and worked his father's mill down by the river, crushing wheat into flour, with little time to dither. His mother had died, and his father was ill, which left Bobble and his cat in charge of the mill. When he was not working and slaving away, he wandered the woods chewing sprigs of gold hay. Or he'd sit up in the rafters, watching the moonlight through the gaps in the roof, the stars twinkling so bright. And so he could be found on that very evening, on the topmost beam, the firmament receiving. His father was asleep in his bunk down below. His only company then was the silver glow of the moon as it traced up its usual track, crescent glinting as it rose behind Mount Deldon, Duraq. The moon and Lady Constance Fitz-Wilbur, as ever, his one-eyed black cat with whom he shared every endeavour. He stroked Lady Constance's soft little head, and looked down at his father asleep in his bed. "It's funny," he sighed, "having just one single friend with whom to converse with at the day's end, and while others would find with a cat some objection, I must conclude that upon much reflection, although you soft little critter, don't speak, words can be bitter, while your meows only sound sweet." Lady Constance blinked back with her one eye her assent. She might not speak human, but she knew what he meant. "Whoosh! What was that?" whispered Bobble aloud. Something was outside the window, he knew. "I will see what it is," he then bravely vowed, and crept along the rafter to the window and looked through. There he beheld the strangest thing he had ever seen, far stranger even than the contents of the white wagon. For perched on the edge of a half-rotted beam was unmistakably a small, scaly, red dragon. "Good evening," spoke the beast in a tone not unkind. "I say it's awful cold out here, and us dragons, you know, need a nice hot furnace in which to relax and unwind. Would you have such a place where I could now go